8 spine-chilling horrors of sinister neighbors in Appalachia. Unexplained secrets revealed. Jenna's heart raced in the quiet dusk as shadows danced ominously around the trees, a grim warning of the secrets buried in the hills. The Appalachians held a darkness the city buzz had masked, but now, here she stood, breathless and anxious, in a cottage that felt less like home and more like a trap. Her 7-year-old son, Jamie, clutched his stuffed bear tighter, the fabric stained and worn, a relic of their chaotic past. That cozy allure of fresh air filled with earthly smells now felt suffocating amidst whispers of strange customs and unsettling families. Day by day, the vibrant green landscape transformed into a prison. Twisted symbols carved into ancient oaks caught her eyes, a horror she recognized, a memory from the damp corners of her childhood nightmares. Flickering lights peeked through the trees at night, accompanied by the sound of laughter that echoed through the valleys, but this was no friendly sound. It was a siren call, an invitation to something dark. Fires burned incessantly at the neighboring farmhouse, casting eerie shadows that ripped through the serenity she had hoped to find. At first, just the corner of her eye caught the flickers, then the whispers began, growing louder and more insistent. The townsfolk's eyes followed her each time she entered the village store, glinting with unspoken knowledge. They exchanged knowing looks, they held the key to her unease, yet dared not speak it. And Jamie, with his innocent curiosity, became enthralled too. One night, she found him mumbling a haunting melody, lines from an old lullaby twisted into something far more disturbing. He scrawled symbols, the very same that fretted her mind, across the pages of his coloring book, his laughter echoing like taunts. That was the moment when dread crawled under her skin. One tumultuous evening, pulled by an eerie compulsion, Jenna set out to discover the source of the ominous glow spilling from the heart of the woods. The air thickened as she stepped further into the damp darkness, her instinct shrieking at her to turn back. But the laughter, it beckoned her, an intoxicating call that promised answers. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clearing loomed ahead, shadowy figures surrounding a blazing fire, all entranced by its flickering light, faces twisted into a rapture of fear and ecstasy. Dark flowers were woven into their hair, their bodies swayed like reeds in a storm. Through the cacophony, she recognized some neighbors, familiar smiles turned sinister. A cold shiver raced through her. She saw Jamie's small form lurking between the trees, eyes wider than she had ever seen, locked in a stare towards the fire's dance. That smile on his lips didn't belong to a child, something deeper had taken hold. Chaotic drumming of her heart threatened to drown out her thoughts. Jenna took a fortifying breath and called for him, but he didn't flinch, still caught in their rhythm. As she rushed toward him, the chant escalated, slicing through her like a knife. Reality twisted around her. The realization hit like a shockwave. This wasn't just a gathering, it was a ritual, a dark communion with forces she couldn't comprehend. As she reached for Jamie, he turned, eyes glazed over, and her world crumbled. In that moment, she understood her fresh start had led them to the heart of an old darkness. And the whispers were waiting for her answer. Jenna's breath hitched, caught in her throat like a thorn. The figure of Jamie, beneath the glow of the flaming heart, looked more ghost than child. She lunged forward, desperate, her hands outstretched. The chanting grew louder, a thundering pulse that matched the beating of her heart. This was not just a prank or an innocent game, these people had led her son astray. Jamie! Come to me! Her voice cracked, sharp against the dark night. But her pleas were swallowed by the cauldron of sound swirling around the fire. The figures turned slightly, their heads bobbing in a trance, but they weren't looking at her. They were focused on the flames, each face an eerie mask of devotion to something unspeakable. Fear clawed at her resolve, yet she pressed on, cutting through twisted legs of the watchers. The heat radiated around her, stirring something unholy in the air. She reached for Jamie one more time, fingers brushing against his shoulder. For a heartbeat, his gaze shifted, a flicker of recognition breaking through the fog. Then it vanished. "No!" she cried, pulling him back. Jamie's body stiffened, and he turned himself away from her grasp, running toward the fire. A fit of panic surged through Jenna, throwing her into action as she tackled him to the ground. They fell in a heap, and she felt the warmth of the flames sear her skin. "Mommy? What's wrong?" Jamie's voice was thin but clear, the innocence a sharp contrast to the madness surrounding them. The chanting jolted as the townsfolk noticed their scuffle. Eyes widened, shadows shifted in surprise. In that split second, Jenna's mind raced. Was the child still inside that body, or did the darkness have him completely? "Listen to me, Jamie. We have to get away from here." She grabbed his hands tightly, feeling the warmth of his small body, desperate to anchor him amidst the shifting chaos. But a figure stepped forward, tall and dressed in tattered robes that fanned around him like darkness itself. The leader, Jenna realized, the one who wielded power everywhere. His eyes glinted with a mix of malice and zeal, as if he saw right through her, stripping away her maternal instincts. "He is chosen," he declared, voice booming with authority that lodged itself in her chest like a rock. Realization washed over her like cold river water. Jamie's vulnerability was being exploited, twisted into a vessel for their dark practices. The energy around the fire pulsed, almost alive, veins of shadow weaving through the crowd. "We have not come to take him," the leader continued, his smile slicing across his face like a crescent moon, a promise of doom hidden behind a facade of delight. "He is here as you all are, to embrace the call of the forgotten ones." "No. He is just a boy." Jenna screamed, her sanity shredding with each word. "Just a boy?" the leader repeated mockingly. "He is not just a boy. He is part of something greater, something eternal." As if guided by invisible strings, the others began to sway, chanting louder, pulling Jenna deeper into the oppressive night. Each beat of the drum echoed her failures, her thoughts drowned in terror not just for herself, but for Jamie. Then a sudden light exploded through the trees, white and piercing in its brilliance. Jenna shielded her eyes and felt a rush of air whip against her, causing the crowd to stagger back, confusion fanning through them like a scattered wind. "Run, Jamie! Run!" She tugged him up, desperation blazing through her veins. But the energy around them pulsed, seeking to keep them there, to lock them within the grasp of that ancient call. "What's happening?" Jamie whimpered, pulled between two worlds, his gaze flitted back to the crowd. But he still held on to her. Jenna glimpsed the fire, its warmth now a sinister draw, and she knew they had to escape before the chant consumed her son completely. As they broke from the throng, the chanting shifted into furious screams, the air around them crackling with anger. But one question gnawed at her, persistent and unyielding. What had they awoken, and would it ever truly let them go? In the shadows, something stirred beneath the trees, eyes glinting with hunger. Jenna's heart dropped. Whatever they disturbed would not stop until it claimed its price. Would Jamie be enough, or had the darkness already marked them both? Jenna tugged Jamie, urgency fueling her every move. The night air was thick, as if even the shadows could feel the dread curling around them. She darted between the clumps of townsfolk, their wide eyes and gasps stark against the creeping chaos. A chorus of screams erupted around them, the rhythm of the chants fracturing into panic, distorted by the sudden light that had cut through the night. "Keep your head down," Jenna urged, sweat trickling down her back. She could feel the heat of the fire at her back, its malevolence licking the air like a predator. They needed to run. They needed to escape. Each step they took felt like a mile, the ground squished beneath them, roots and stones clawing at her ankles as if trying to haul them back. Jamie stumbled and nearly fell, but she yanked him up, her grip fierce. "I want to let them take you," she gasped. Behind them, the charms and incantations spiraled into a furious crescendo. The leader's booming voice echoed, drowning out the cries of fear. "It's too late. He is ours now." The words wrapped around Jenna like chains, dragging her back into that abyss of fear. Farther ahead, the underbrush seemed to shift ominously. The thick fingers of the trees stretched out, familiar but sinister. They weren't just escaping the crowd, they were racing from something that wanted them, something that hungered in the dark. Jenna shuddered, glancing back only to see the flickering lights of torches rushing forward, shadows pouring from the fire, eager to reclaim what was theirs. "Mommy." Jamie's voice trembled, pulling her back to him. The innocence, so precious, hung in the balance. "No. Stay close." She pressed forward, a bear fighting through a storm. Panic churned in her gut, she couldn't let him go, not even for a second. Every moment spent away from the fire felt like stolen time. Behind them, the shadowy figures surged, a chaotic wave of chants and desperate anger. Just when Jenna thought they'd slipped through their grasp, a figure lunged from the trees like an arrow released from a bow. It crashed through the underbrush, reaching out toward Jamie. Jenna flung herself in front of her son, heart racing, adrenaline surging. "Get back. Stay away from my son." The figure paused. Jenna recognized the face, distorted but familiar. It was one of the neighbors. "Jenna." A raspy voice came, trembling with urgency. "They'll never let you go. Get away from him." She screamed, feeling the heat of fury flood her veins. But the neighbor's eyes were wide, pleading, lost. "You don't understand. You have to come back. He's meant to be." A broken sob caught in Jenna's throat. "No. Jamie isn't yours." She pulled Jamie tight against her, terror gripping her heart like ice. No matter how far they ran, was this nightmare ever going to end? But the shouting from the townsfolk grew closer, filling the night with fevered chants. The leader's voice boomed once again, and they could hear the drums thrumming in the distance, summoning something dark and ancient. Jenna felt a shiver crawl up her spine. The tale of the forgotten ones, a myth spun from fear, an echo of dread whispered over campfires, was coming to life. "Mommy, I'm scared." Jamie whimpered, the innocence slipping from his voice. All around them, shadows flickered without form, pulling at the corners of her vision. Something primal stirred in those depths, a feeling that made her throat constrict. They broke clear of the trees onto an open field, a breath of freedom enveloping them momentarily. But Jenna's heart raced like a jackrabbit, because light or not, the fire's evil still lingered. "What's happening?" Jamie asked again, eyes wide and filled with something she didn't want to see. Jenna whimpered, a tight knot settling in her stomach. "I don't know," she admitted, dread spilling from her words. "But we can't stop. We have to keep moving." The world beyond felt wrong, like a trap just waiting for them to misstep. Then she heard it, the sound of laughter, dark and mocking, echoing behind them. It was enough to freeze her blood. There was a reckoning yet to come, a heavy weight bearing down on their escape. As they stumbled through the darkness, Jenna knew their fight wasn't over. The darkness wasn't just hunting them, it was closing in. And worse, it had Jamie in its sights. What would it take to save him? Minutes stretched like hours, and each beat of her heart felt linked to the chanting rising in the night. Out there, something was waiting. And she could feel it breathing just behind them. Jenna's feet pounded against the ground, boots slapping the damp earth, urgency distorting her rhythm. Jamie tugged at her hand, his small fingers trembling. Every shadow seemed to loom larger, the laughter behind them morphing into a dreadful cacophony, stinging her ears with terror. "Mommy, what is it?" Jamie whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't need to say more, the fear dripped from his every word. I don't know, sweetie, Jenna managed, forcing a semblance of calm into her voice. But we have to keep going. Ahead, the moon cast silver beams through gaps in the trees, illuminating patches of darkness that bobbed and swayed like phantoms. Each thud of her heart echoed in her ears as she pushed through the fear wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. They veered towards a narrow path, half hidden by creeping vines. It felt like a gamble, an unmarked road promising either salvation or doom. The chanting behind them accelerated, fierce and hungry. Dark shapes flickered just beyond the trees, teasingly close, ready to pounce. Jenna. A voice sliced through the thick air, a familiar sound that stung. It was a neighbor, Martha, running toward them with arms outstretched, eyes wild. You have to come back. No. Jenna shouted, shielding Jamie with her body, vision swimming in panic. Stay away. You don't understand. But Martha was undeterred. They'll take him. You cannot escape this. Her voice broke, the words laced with desperation. A flicker of fear lit Martha's eyes, and in it, Jenna saw a glimpse of the person she once knew. Jenna. Another voice growled from the shadows. Mark, once the friendly handyman, now twisted and malevolent. It's too late, he's one of us now. His face was hard to recognize amidst the dark tension, but the hunger in his voice was unmistakable. Jenna pressed against Jamie, her heart racing even faster. We need to go. Now. They burst into a hurried sprint down the narrow path, the pounding behind them merging with the thumping in her chest. The world blurred around her, a mix of shadows and flashes of light, trees bending low, as if trying to grasp them. The air thickened, a suffocating blanket that stole her breath. She glanced back. The townsfolk had formed a dark mass, their faces snapshots of fear and fervor, chants of possession echoing like a morbid hymn. Mommy, I don't want them to take me. Jamie's voice trembled, cracking like a twig underfoot. Jenna's throat tightened, dread pooling like ice. They won tea. She shouted, even as uncertainty gnawed at her insides. But deeper down, a terrifying thought wormed its way into her mind. What if fighting this wasn't in her control? Suddenly, they reached the edge of the forest, a clearing opened before them. The very center of the town wasn't far. It glimmered under a faint light, but the atmosphere was thick with dread. No! Jamie shouted, recoiling as the tainted air sank into his lungs. He could sense the malevolence. Jenna squeezed his hand tighter, willing her legs to move faster. Then, she turned and spotted the old church, its silhouette menacing against the pale sky, the door ajar, beckoning. Inside, she could still hear the rhythmic chants of the gathering crowd, echoing off the walls like a haunting melody. It won stop. Jenna said, pulling Jamie toward the church, momentarily reckless. We can find safety inside. As they dashed toward the door, a sudden crack like thunder resonated through the night. The ground trembled, sending both Jenna and Jamie sprawling. Dread washed over her as dark clouds formed over the town. Jenna scrambled to her feet, fear pulsing in her veins. The flickering shadows intensified, swarming toward them, reaching with claw-like fingers. Run! She screamed, urgency charging through her body. But deep inside, she fought against a growing sense of despair. What if the church wasn't a sanctuary but a trap? Just as she steadied herself, a piercing scream broke the night. It wasn't a distant cry, it was Jamie's. At that moment, Jenna's heart shattered. Jamie. The name ripped from her throat, an echo of her deepest fear. But before she could move, a familiar, wicked laughter cascaded around her, entwining with the shadows. The darkness danced, flickering with a life of its own. In that instant, Jenna realized this wasn't merely a hunt. It was a reckoning. And Jamie wasn't just in danger, he was the focus of a twisted fate. As she lunged forward, she asked herself the question that turned her knees to jelly: what were they truly willing to sacrifice to reclaim their lost kin? The shadows closed in, hungry and relentless. The town had awakened, and something terrible was about to unfold. Jenna's heart pounded as she surged toward the church door, desperate to reach Jamie and pull him from the brink. The shadows coiled tighter around her, painting dread across her skin. She could feel the weight of countless eyes behind her, hungry and eager to pull her into their nightmarish embrace. "Jamie!" She cried out again, her voice edged with panic. "Hold on, baby, I'm coming." But the door of the church loomed larger, its entrance a dark maw, warping the very air around it. The moment stretched painfully as Jenna skidded to a stop in front of the door, her breath hitching in her throat. The chants carried on the wind, drumming into her skull, wrapping every thought in terror. "Please, please," she muttered, gripping the handle. It felt ice-cold against her palm, as if it had been untouched by warmth or light for ages. Hesitating, she turned to look at Jamie, who stood poised at the edge of the clearing. His small face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "Stay close," she whispered, forcing herself to shove down the rising dread. As the door creaked open, an overwhelming scent of decay hit her like a viscous wave. The inside of the church was swallowed in gloom, cobwebs hung like macabre decorations, and the flickering flames of a few candles cast ominous shadows along the stone walls. The rhythmic chant pulsated from beyond the altar, the words unintelligible yet sharp, slicing through the heavy air. "Mommy, I don't like it." Jamie's voice trembled, pulling at her heart like a taut string ready to snap. "I know, sweetie. We'll be safe in here," she promised, even as uncertainty clawed at her. They stepped inside together, Jamie's steps barely a whisper against the cold stone. As they crossed the threshold, a chill swept through Jenna. It wasn't just cold, it was a weight, an ancient presence settling over her like a funeral shroud. The chanting grew louder, swelling with an eerie rhythm, and Jenna felt an inexplicable pull toward the source. The altar, shrouded in darkness, glimmered with unholy offerings, twisted branches, bones, and something viscously thick that glimmered like blood. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice was a frightened gasp as he pointed behind her. Jenna turned sharply, and her breath caught. The townsfolk crowded outside the door, faces flushed with a grotesque mix of fervor and insanity. The edges of their mouths twisted into smiles, yet their eyes were wide and hollow, devoid of humanity. They didn't look like neighbors, they looked like a herd of lost souls driven by a dark hunger. "Join us!" One screeched, laughter bubbling like a cauldron, the sound slicing through Jenna's reserves like a jagged knife. She staggered back, the realization sealing itself in her mind: they weren't just chanting for Jamie. They were calling for him, beckoning him into their fold, a puppet to their sinister game. Jenna's heart seized with sudden clarity. This was a merging of worlds, darker, deeper than she could have imagined. She had seen the way they looked at Jamie, the way they had clawed at the edges of the night for him. She couldn't let him be consumed. "Run!" she shouted, yanking Jamie's hand, retreating toward the door, but it swung shut at her command, slamming against the frame as if it had a will of its own. Panic washed over her. "What's happening? You can't leave!" They chanted in unison, their voices twining together like vines wrapping around her. Jenna's chest tightened, dread crawling up her spine. The laughter grew louder, battling against her own heartbeat, each thud reminding her of the reality closing in around them. "Not again! I won't lose you!" she cried, shaking Jamie, desperate to reignite the spark of connection between them above the encroaching darkness. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, its face illuminated by the flickering candlelight. It was Martha, her eyes glistening with flames of madness. "He belongs with us, Jenna. You can't take him from what he's meant to be." "No, no, this couldn't be happening." Jenna felt the ground beneath her shift, the entire room seemed to pulse like a living entity. Were they losing the battle even before it had begun? Mommy. Jamie's voice pierced through Jenna's spiraling thoughts, raw with desperation. Make it stop. Behind them, the chanting began to swell, an ominous crescendo that threatened to drown her out. The walls felt like they were closing in, an inevitable end awaited if she didn't act fast. With newfound resolve, Jenna gathered her strength, ready to fight against the tide. We will not let this end here, she thought, clenching Jamie's hand as she spun back toward the altar. But just as she prepared to confront whatever darkness lay ahead, a shadow darted across her vision, cutting through her planned defiance. Something was slinking from the altar. Emerging from the darkness, it was not just a presence, it was a figure, an echo from the nightmares she had feared most. Welcome home, it greeted, its voice a sinister lullaby that both soothed and terrified. And just like that, Jenna realized that the true battle was only beginning. The figure stepped closer, and Jenna's heart raced. It was a woman, stretched impossibly tall, her limbs twisted like branches in a storm. Her face was obscured by shadows that writhed like they had a life of their own, yet Jenna could feel the weight of her gaze, a fong of predatory intent that pierced through the darkness. What are you? Jenna stammered, instinctively shielding Jamie behind her. The chill intensified, a gust of foul air swirling around them, lifting her hair in a ghostly caress. I am the bridge, the figure whispered, her words drifting like smoke. The circle is complete, and you are the last piece. Behind her, the townsfolk intoned, mesmerizing in their zeal, their chants growing wild and frenetic. Leave us alone. Jenna shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. But the woman merely smiled, revealing rows of darkened teeth. You cannot protect him from what is his. Eternal bonds are stronger than flesh and blood. Jenna's mind raced. She thought of Jamie, her fierce love for him crashing against the tidal wave of horror before her. We don't belong to you. Ah, but you do, the woman countered, stepping even closer, her form becoming less a solid figure and more an amalgamation of raw fear. The soil craved him, he is of this land now. As if in response, the walls of the church began to tremble, the very stones breathing with life. Shadows intensified, pooling around the townsfolk who stood outside, their chants harmonizing with the pulsing earth. It felt as though the entire church was alive, awakening from a slumber of centuries, refusing to let them leave. Mommy, please. Jamie cried, clutching her hand tighter, his wide eyes dark pools of fear. Hold on to me, Jamie. Don't let go. Jenna shouted, her voice strained and unwavering. But the hold of the darkness was fierce. The figure extended a hand, black nails glinting, beckoning them deeper into the maw of the altar. Come into the light of truth, my dear. Darkness is just a shadow of our fears. With every word, Jenna fought against the trance the townsfolk inched toward her with. Their faces bore expressions transforming into grotesque masks of anticipation. If they reached Jamie, look at the truth. The figure howled, and suddenly the candles flickered violently, illuminating behind her the altar's dreadful offerings. Bone fragments, hungering vines, and rotting flesh twisted together in a chaotic display of darkness. No! Jenna screamed, pulling Jamie back as the spell of fear thickened, suffocating her. The walls warped, and a scream echoed, not just Jamie's, but one that came from the very depths of the church. A pulsing heart, throbbing in agitation, awakening. Jenna's breath hitched, the reality of the altar washing over her like poison. This is wrong. It can't be real. But every instinct screamed that it was. There were voices, whispers, licking at the edges of her consciousness. She could almost hear the stories of the lost ones trapped within, begging for redemption, lost to the darkness of the earth that fed on their fear. Join us. Embrace the truth. The townsfolk crowed, their voices becoming one, echoing through the hollow church. No. This ends now. Jenna, with a fierce determination, took a step forward, feeling the ground tremble beneath her feet, resonating with the desperate fight she felt surging within. Words poured from her, raw and potent. "Jamie is not yours. We are leaving." Silence spread instantaneously, thick as fog, pressing into her mind like a vice. Every eye focused on her, stunned, as if the very air had cloaked their madness in sudden stillness. And for a moment, the world paused, a heartbeat away from chaos. But then, the figure erupted forward, a flicker of darkness poised to engulf them whole. "You think you can escape this?" Jenna's pulse thudded as reality began to warp. The altar glimmered, shadowy nimbuses emerging, all eyes fixed upon Jamie, gleaming with hungry anticipation. With a surge of strength, Jenna pulled Jamie against her, preparing for the inevitable descent into despair. "Hold on!" she shouted, breaking through the echoing silence. Was this the end, or just the start of something even more monstrous? The truth awaited as the shadows leaped and twisted, eager to swallow them whole. Just then, a loud crack reverberated through the church, parting the air like a scream. The ground shook, and Jenna felt herself teetering on the precipice of oblivion, every breath a battle against the terror that screamed to pull them down. Yet, from the chaos, she sensed a way out, an unseen opening amidst the shadows. But would it mean risking everything? "Stay close, Jamie. Whatever happens, we fight back." The darkness loomed, but a flicker of hope ignited. They had to find a way, or the echo of despair would be their only fate. Could they reclaim the light from this looming darkness, or were they bound to lose forever? Jenna's heart thundered in the depths of her chest as the chaos of the church enveloped them. The figure loomed, a dark silhouette cutting through the frantic energy of chanting townsfolk. They surged closer, eyes wide with manic devotion, filled with twisted anticipation. A primal instinct flared within her. She had to escape, to protect Jamie at all costs. "Mommy, I'm scared." Jamie whimpered, his tiny voice breaking through the cacophony. "Me too." Jenna barely managed to say, her own fear clawing at her throat. She tightened her grip on his hand, as if holding on could somehow shield him from the encroaching horror. Suddenly, the air turned electric. In the center of the altar, shadows twisted into shapes that defied comprehension, faces, limbs, grasping at the edges of reality, yearning for release. Jenna's vision narrowed, her mind racing. There was something about the altar, something dark and ancient, that felt like it seeped from the very earth itself. "Jenna." The voice was low, urging her to look away from the figure. It was one of the townsfolk, a man she recognized from the grocery store, eyes filled with something she didn't dare name. "You don't understand, it's already too late." A sense of dread washed over her as his words settled into her gut. "No!" Jenna shouted, "We are leaving now." But the woman at the center of it all raised her hand, and the ground trembled again, causing Jenna to stumble to the side, dragging Jamie with her. Dark vines shot up from beneath the altar, curling and twisting, hungry for more. They were like fingers reaching for them, desperate to pull them into the abyss. Children of this land must return to their roots. The figure roared, her voice rising above the chanting like a wailing wind. "They belong to us." With a swift, decisive action, Jenna turned and sprinted toward the exit, dragging Jamie along behind her. The church doors loomed ahead, seemingly far too distant. But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. The townsfolk, wide-eyed with fervor, surged forward, chanting louder, their voices blending into an incomprehensible roar. Shadows darted around them like angry spirits, lashing out as they moved, but Jenna pressed on. "Faster, Jamie. We're almost there." Just as Jenna's fingertips brushed the cold wood of the door, it slammed shut with a thunderous crash. An unseen force seemed to hold it fast, trapping them inside this tomb of despair. She pounded against the door, panic flooding her senses, drowning out everything else. "Let us out. Please," she cried, her voice cracking. The feeble echoes of her pleas were swallowed whole by the chilling chants, a grotesque celebration of the coming darkness. In that moment, the ground quaked violently. Jenna fell to her knees, clutching Jamie tightly. Dust rained down like a graveyard's blessing, each particle weighing heavily with impending doom. From the depths of the altar, an echo rang. Join us in the eternal night. Embrace what you truly are. Jenna's breath came in ragged gasps. What are we supposed to be? We're not like you. The desperation roared through her, battling against the tightening grip of fear. The figure glanced down at the altar, and Jenna followed her gaze. A golden amulet, glimmering with its own sinister light, pulsed at the center of the vile offerings. It radiated with an ominous energy that beckoned like a siren's call, but it felt as if it were drawing Jamie, not her. They want him, Jenna understood, the realization striking like ice into her veins. They want to use him. No. She screamed, standing now and throwing herself against the closed door. Not Jamie. The chanting intensified, rising to a crescendo, as shadows lunged toward them like wild animals. Time slowed, each heartbeat thudding in her ears as she prepared for the worst. Was this the end, or was there still a way to break free from their grasp? As if fueled by her fury, Jenna lunged at the altar in a dangerous rush. She had to reach that amulet. But was it the key to saving them or their demise? Would her bravery ignite hope, or send them spiraling into darkness for good? Before she could reach it, a chilling wind blew through the church, extinguishing the candles, plunging them into absolute blackness. Jenna's heart raced as the darkness enveloped them, swallowing her whole. She could barely see Jamie, only a faint outline next to her. The chanting had transformed into a rhythmic pulse, matching the frantic beating of her heart. Shadows crept closer, whispering sinister promises of the unknown. Mommy? Jamie's voice trembled, fragile as glass in the heavy air. I'm here. Jenna gasped, squeezing his hand tighter. Every fiber of her being screamed for light, for clarity. Suddenly, a flicker returned dim and sinister. The pulsing light from the amulet at the altar cut through the blackness, illuminating twisted faces within the crowd. Their expressions were rapturous, eyes gleaming with anticipation of something horrific. Let us out. We're not part of this. Jenna shouted, desperation creeping into her tone as she jerked against the door, but it felt like slamming against a brick wall. Cold and unyielding. The shadows danced, flickering with rage and hunger. Jenna's instincts screamed that they were more than just silhouettes, they were a part of whatever dark force commanded this night. Jenna, we have to go. Jamie cried, pulling at her. He was terrified, his small body trembling beside her. She glanced down at him, hoping to reassure him, but her heart sank deeper into despair. The voices grew louder, chanting a dreadful refrain, "Child of the soil, return to your roots." No more. Jenna shouted, her voice cutting through the chants like a knife. We're leaving. But the amulet pulsed bright once more, and something deep in her gut told her it was calling to Jamie. A shiver ran down her spine. She had to reach it, had to protect him. As if sensing her thoughts, the darkness thickened, pressing around them, suffocating. Shadows coiled like serpents, hungry for prey. Jenna felt the pull of despair, her resolve waning. But then she heard Jamie whisper, terrified yet defiant, "I want to go home." Home. The thought ignited a spark of rage within her. Jenna straightened, looking at the altar, the amulet now brighter than before, an evil beacon in this hellish storm. What do you want? She staggered forward, putting herself between Jamie and the advancing darkness. Come for me. Leave my son alone. The congregation stopped, heads pivoting toward her, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The figure on the altar stood taller, dark hair flowing like smoke, her lips curling into a smile that sent chills down Jenna's spine. Such bravery, she purred, her voice rich and dark, echoing through the blackness. But the blood of the children must be tasted. You cannot save him. He belongs to us. No! Jenna screamed, a wild fury erupting inside her. He's mine. With a fierce determination, she charged toward the altar, the shadowy hands lunging at her, attempting to drag her into the swirling void. They reached out fingers like shadows, gripping at her ankles. In sheer panic, Jenna kicked back, feeling her foot connect with one of the figures. It recoiled, a hiss escaping from its lips, but some others came at her, weaving like spirits bent on vengeance. Jenna! Jamie shouted, but she couldn't look back. She had to reach the amulet. Just inches away, she stretched her hand toward the pulsing object, feeling its heat radiate toward her. Time seemed to stretch, each second feeling like eternity. Would it save them or doom them? The moment she grasped it, a blinding light erupted through the darkness, casting away the shadows that threatened to consume her. But as the light enveloped her, she felt a terrible weight. The amulet felt alive, squirming as if it were a creature, feeding off her fear. The chanting fell silent, and the world dissolved around her. In that fleeting moment, Jenna realized she wasn't alone. From the depths of the shadows, a pair of eyes looked back at her. They were familiar yet twisted, and with one gasp, she recognized the face. Mommy! Her blood ran cold. Jamie's face was not behind her anymore. Where was he? What had they done? As the darkness surged back, she screamed, but the light flickered, and with it, her hope. Was it too late to rescue her son? The altar began to shift. The shadows stirred, and a new dread filled the space. Jenna felt their intentions swirling, hungry and dark. The true horror was just beginning. The world twisted and turned as Jenna clutched the amulet, its heat searing through her fingers. A storm of shadows swirled around her, edging closer, suffocating her with their dark hunger. The twisted faces she had glimpsed before were now pressed against the walls of her mind, their mouths contorted in rapture as they witnessed her desperation. Jamie! Her voice was a rattle, desperation clawing at her throat. She wouldn't let him slip away. But the shadows beckoned, weaving tales of despair. They whispered in sinister tones, "Join us, be one with the darkness." Jenna shook her head violently, sweat sliding down her brow. She could feel the pull of the amulet, a magnetic force anchoring her to its dread power. And as the chanting resumed, a new refrain emerged, one thick with malevolence: "The pact is made, the price must be paid." With every pulse of the amulet, Jenna felt her insides twist tighter. No! She screamed, the sound tearing through the oppressive air like shattering glass. "You'll never have him." But the amulet shuddered in her grasp, casting reddish glows that seeped into the shadows. The chanting grew more intense, a cacophony crashing against her sanity, echoing her worst fears. The crowd, now indistinct, wore grotesque smiles, mouths stretching too wide, teeth too sharp. She could almost see Jamie again, a silhouette framed in the chaotic mass of shadows. "Mommy!" His voice haunted her, laced with terror and heartache. "Help me! Hold on!" She cried and pushed forward, toward the altar that seemed to shift like quicksand beneath her feet. Every step felt like a battle, against hands that clawed at her ankles, whispering promises of surrender. Rationality curled up in the face of their desperation. If she could reach the altar, perhaps she could break the cycle, but the moment her foot touched the altar's base, the room exploded in blinding light. Jenna stumbled, fingers slipping from the amulet, only to have the shadows surge forward like a tidal wave. They wrapped around her, cold and clammy, dragging her downward, pulling her into the abyss. "Mommy!" The cry of her son echoed louder, stronger. But it was fading, twisting into a horrific chorus with the chanting of the congregation. Suddenly, something jerked within the darkness. Jenna's breath caught as the air thickened with a rancid smell, the sweet scent of decay. The darkness churned, and with it came a sickening laugh, a twisted mockery of her parenting. "He's ours now, dear. You will pay for the bloodline you've broken." She clawed at the shadows now swirling around her, panic mingling with the amulet's heat, swirling up her arms. This isn't over. The defiance surged anew, but as she shouted, the shadows pressed deeper, swallowing her words. And then, stillness. The shadows fell back like a receding tide, exposing the altar in its twisted entity. The faces remained, shifting closer, reveling in her despair. In an instant, the amulet began to pulse again, its light flickering like a candle about to gutter out. The chanting had shifted to a singular phrase: one will fall, and one will be reborn. Jenna felt the dread knot in her stomach. What did that mean? Before she could process, the light from the amulet enveloped her completely. Jenna sensed her surroundings blurring. The crowd with their maddening eyes faded, the altar pulsed brighter, and everything went white. Then, the world snapped back. She gasped, inhaling shallow breaths in a vast void. Nothing remained but silence, and then a cry, Jamie's cry. Where was he? Panic rose, choking her. Jamie. The darkness loomed again, but it felt lighter, almost breathable. A populated silhouette appeared, then vanished. Jenna stumbled through the void, searching desperately, the echoes of his voice guiding her. Mommy, where are you? With resolve, she pressed on. One question lay heavy on her tongue: what had become of Jamie? As she pushed through the oppressive silence, the shadows knotted tighter, and a warning sent a chill down her spine. She wasn't alone. Something stirred in the depths. What awaited her in this new realm? What horrors lingered in the darkness? Only one thing was certain: the greatest sacrifice was yet to come. Jenna felt weightless, floating amidst the silence, yet her heart raced with frantic desperation. Every sense heightened as she strained to hear Jamie's voice through the suffocating shadows. She stumbled forward, her instincts screaming for her to keep moving. Jamie! She cried, raw pain spilling from her lips. Mommy! The call echoed, familiar yet distant, tugging at her heart with an urgency that fueled her resolve. She pushed through the void, shadows swirling like ink around her, whispers clawing at her ears, urging her to surrender to despair. With a sharp intake of breath, Jenna began to recall their escape, the amulet's wicked pulse still lingering in her veins. The pact, she murmured, the words dripping with dread. The price must be paid. But she wouldn't pay with Jamie's life. Not now. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke through, a soft shimmer fighting against the oppressive dark. Jamie! She shouted again, and this time she saw it, a figure, small and frightened, caught in a web of shadows. Her heart raced, hope igniting within her as she rushed forward. Mommy, please, Jamie pleaded, wide eyes glistening with fear, surrounded by dark vines that pulsed and writhed like snakes. He looked so helpless, so small. A part of her wanted to weep, yet fury surged to the surface, igniting a fierce spirit within her. Hold on. I'm coming. She shouted, anxiety clawing at her throat as she fought against the dark tendrils reaching for her. She focused all her energy into one thought: rescue him. The shadows coiled tighter, as if they felt her determination, but she refused to back down. Jenna barreled through, tearing at the dark vines that whispered her fears in alluring tones. They snaked around her fists, but she held on, gritting her teeth against the darkness. You don't own him. With a surge of strength that surprised her, Jenna broke through, ripping away the dark tendrils binding Jamie. He gasped, his small hands gripping hers tightly, his eyes radiant with trust. Mommy! You found me. Of course I did. We're getting out of here. The shadows howled in fury, an angry gale whipping around them. Jenna could feel the enraged presence surging toward them, a last desperate attempt to reclaim what was theirs. But Jenna didn't waver. You're not taking him. She screamed, and in that moment, she recalled the amulet, the source of their power and anguish. It pulsed in her memory, a relentless beacon of desire and distress. She turned to Jamie, who looked so small and scared, the innocence in his eyes piercing through her resolve. We have to destroy it. She shouted above the swirling chaos. Mommy, no. Jamie cried, dragging back slightly, fear etched across his face. What if it's the only way? It's not. We'll find another way. But we can't let them take you. The shadows twisted, screeching around them, but she held Jamie's gaze steady, willing him to see the light in her heart, the love that would shield him from the growing darkness. The amulet shimmered, pulsing with a menacing aura. If they were to break free, it had to end. Taking a deep breath, she surged forward, Jamie by her side, both navigating the snarling shadows that loomed in threat. Together. She shouted, clutching Jamie's hand tightly. Together, we can do this. Holding on to their bond, they rushed toward the pulsing light. With each step, the atmosphere thickened, shadows writhing angrily at their approach, screaming as they drew closer. Just a little more. Jenna pleaded, terror coiling in her chest as the shadows reached out to snatch them back. But they pressed on, driven by love, by fierce determination. At that moment, Jenna felt the universe hold its breath. They broke through the final barrier, and in an explosive wave of energy, she grasped the amulet with both hands. A searing pain flared through her, twisting her insides, but she pressed on, hot tears spilling down her cheeks. You will not have my son. With one final heave, she ripped it from its altar. A blinding flash erupted. Everything exploded. The shadows shrieked, the light crackled fiercely, and Jamie's hand was still in hers. They tumbled back, pouring themselves into the bright energy of freedom. The darkness writhed violently as the amulet shattered into 1,000 pieces, the shadows shrinking back into the abyss, screams echoing into nothingness. Jenna's heart pounded, the warmth of Jamie's breath mingling with her own as they landed on solid ground. Raw, jubilant laughter bubbled from her throat. We did it! She cried, pulling Jamie into her embrace, his small body pressing against her like the anchor she needed. We're free. The remnants of darkness faded into the background, and light began to seep into the edges, illuminating the land around them. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, revealing a vibrant sky streaked with orange and pink, as if signaling a new beginning. Jenna pulled back, cupping Jamie's face in her hands, joy mingling with the remnants of fear. We're safe now. You're safe, sweetheart, she whispered, rubbing away the tears that had fallen for too long. He nodded, eyes shining with relief and trust. Her warrior spirit surged with the knowledge that they had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. As they took a moment to breathe, Jenna glanced back toward the chaotic remnants behind them, a ghostly memory that would serve as a reminder of the strength they never knew they had until they fought for what truly mattered. But in that twilight, with love binding them together, they realized that whatever shadows awaited, they would face them, hand in hand. Because together, they had conquered not just fear, but the darkness that had threatened to tear them apart. This was their true beginning, the fight for their love and freedom, stronger than any shadows that dared to approach. As the last lingering echoes of darkness faded, Jenna squeezed Jamie's hand tighter, a newfound sense of peace washing over them. They would heal, and they would thrive, unbreakable. And just like that, their journey of redemption into a brighter tomorrow had begun. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.